It's episode 4 of what I believe is now officially titled Crank Up, the Qrank GG League of Legends podcast. My name is still TJ, joined as ever by an Ibriz who may still currently be playing Magic the Gathering.
Well, I only play League of Legends, TJ. I don't know what you're talking about, but
Okay,
yeah,
an Ibriz who
I'm
is not
fresh-faced.
currently playing Magic the Gathering. And our very special guest, Mad Magical,
Hello.
who is the longest tenured freelance caster in North America. With previous work on Cloud9's Academy broadcast, I did the math. And the LCS Academy broadcast, most recently EU Masters. How are you doing,
Hello,
Magical?
that's me. I'm awake. My sleep schedule is no longer the EU sleep schedule that I had changed it to, where I was waking up at 3 in the morning and going to bed at 5 in the afternoon. But I still was able to make it to this nice and early podcast.
I had a while where I was doing all of the Arena of Valor stuff, which was based out of China. And so I was waking up at like 6 p.m. and then working through the night till about 6 a.m. and then going to sleep. And just doing it again, and it was the single most alienating experience of my life because I didn't talk to anyone for like a month.
Right? That is exactly how I felt when I was doing the EU Masters, because I'd wake up at 3 in the morning. Of course, no one's up. Nothing's open, so you can't go out and get food either. And then by the time things started opening up, I was in calls. I had to make it to rehearsals. We were doing sound checks. And so I couldn't really just go out by the time it was like 7 or 8 a.m. when things would normally up, because that's when I had to be in calls. I had to be physically in front of my camera to do stuff. It was definitely alienating.
It's wild, and I think people with online broadcasts think they're like more chill and easier, but it's hell, especially if it's the wrong time zone. But as I said, I did the math on you. And you have been casting League of Legends since, like, its very dawn. So I wanted to go back a step. How did you get into casting? What, and I haven't asked any of our other guests this, so I want you to know you're special here. What started the whole train? How did you get birthed into League of Legends?
I think you just want to be one of the first people to have the scoop on my whole story. That's what it is, but it's okay. I respect it. So I started playing League of Legends back in 2010. That's when I first started really getting into it. So I'm an oldie when it comes to League of Legends. I've been around the block. I didn't actually get involved in esports though until I'd probably say about 2000, like physically at least, until about 2017 is when I started being like, you know what, I should start casting, because before then I'd watched a lot of like the challenger scenes for both EU and for NA. I loved the LCS back in 2012, 2013 is when I first started watching, but I didn't start casting until about 2017. And I had been streaming beforehand. I'd been doing pretty well just being a streamer, playing League of Legends. People enjoyed me. I'd get like 25, 30 viewers. And I noticed that people, they always wanted to play with me, and I couldn't ever fit enough people into the game. So I was like, okay, you guys play, and I'll just talk over it. And people are like, wow, you're really good at this. You should consider doing this more like as caster. I'm like, oh, maybe I will. And so I reached out to a company that was looking for casters called Compete League at the time.
Spring 2017, our first cast together, Magical.
That was about when I first started. And so they brought me on mostly because I had a pretty decent following on Twitch. I think I at the time had about 1,000 more followers than they did on Twitch. And so they brought me on, and I was terrible. Oh my god, I'm bad. Listening back to your old cast from when you first started is the worst idea you'll ever have in your life. And it is, I've come miles from there, but people thought I was good. And now I look back, I'm like,
hey, I always thought you were good. Yeah, we had that inbuilt synergy from day one. Actually kind of sad, because we used to cast together all the time in like 2017, and then our schedules didn't link up since, and now we talk like once every month or so, but then when we do, it's like, oh, my brother, we're back, we're reunited, but we still haven't been reunited on a broadcast quite yet.
has been a while. It has been a while. But yeah, that's really where I started, was back in Compete League, and it just kept escalating from there, where I'd get more practice. Ibriz would be someone I'd cast with. Ender was one of my first like duo partners that I really worked with most consistently, where it was just pretty much he and I would work in Compete League. We'd go on to a couple different events, gamers.com.malta was some Maltese random league that we casted together.
I did that with Doctor, actually,
Yeah.
end of 2017 as well. Yeah.
So I think we took it up after you guys had done it. We did that.
No, I think I got it after you, because...
Was it? I can't remember the timeline.
I think Hiprain recommended us because he was going to do it and then couldn't, and then, yeah.
Maybe that's what it was. It was hard doing that one, because that, again, time zones. It was miserable for me and Ender, and we were kind of like, nah.
2017 Compete League had Ender, you, myself, Doctor, Opal, Hiprain, who's of course now doing a lot of UK stuff and was doing EU Masters. Yeah, had quite a few people.
It had Captain Flowers on it at one point too.
It did, but I think that was just before our time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to the time zone discussion then, because you did just do EU Masters. How does, this is something that I know is a hot button issue, so I'll try not to get you in trouble. How does EU Masters and the EU developmental scene compare to the NA Academy scene, the North American Tier 2, that you've been casting forever? With the most recent dive into EU Masters, are they still miles and miles and miles ahead of us?
I hate to say that EU better than NA, because I don't want to stroke their ego any more than they need it, but I do think that the European system is better than the North American.
Sure.
I'm not going to go into too many details myself.
He was looking for player caliber and the spice, and I will say that, yeah, while EU is still head and shoulders above NA in terms of raw talent and in terms of understanding about the game for the moment, this was considered to be, by pretty much everyone that watched, the weakest EU Masters that we've seen ever. Like, in terms of player quality, there's no real standout player, maybe like some that stand out like a little bit, but there's no one that you could say, oh, next split he's going to be an LEC, like he did last year with Shadow, Kazi, Gistic, now Kaiser for Mad Lions, Razork, Denick, all of these big rookies that came into LEC in 2020 with that huge influx, left the talent pool in Tier 2 a little bit lacking.
I think it's kind of interesting because, I mean, obviously Ibriz is dunking on the Tier 2 talents in EU, but
no dunking, but
there is a developmental system there, and I think it's worth building maybe the comparison to North America, where nobody thinks it's great. Nobody in North America, even the official casters for the official broadcasts, is going, oh my god, the North American system is working. So, once again, I know it's a hot button issue. Are you on the Save North America train? Do you think there need to be massive structural changes made to our Tier 2 system, our feeder system, especially coming out of EU Masters? Do you think maybe we should be aping some more of their regional league stuff?
I completely agree with that. I have been someone who's been trying to argue this with a lot of people and be like, we need something more like EU. I think that's a very solid system that they have built in, where, while even though this is the weakest one, there are still some players, in my opinion, that I think still deserve an LEC spot. Tinks and Shugenda are probably two players that come to my mind I think that are talented enough to be able to make it to like one of the maybe mid-tier teams on the LEC.
Yeah.
But you look at NA, you look at a lot of those talented players, nobody's really getting their chance to shine. There are a lot of good players that I think deserve an academy spot that aren't even getting a spot right now.
Yeah, academy is a bit of an issue. And just looking at my Twitter feed as of recent, are you familiar with a new esports? One of the bigger academy, amateur orgs.
Before, yeah.
Yeah, they lost some of their team staff this week because they got pretty demotivated about the fact that even if they have this all-star roster of top-tier talent outside of academy, like they're the premier amateur organization right now, there's nowhere for them to go. Like, the organization itself, because Academy League is franchised in North America and there's no regional league or whatever, once they're, cycling through these third-party tournaments again and again, there's no real kind of path to success for them.
And I think that's been something that everyone in the North American scene has been, we'll say, advocating to have fixed. I think that's the pleasant way to phrase that.
Thank you. That's the way I would put it. Is that
Sure.
it's definitely something that we should look into.
Yeah, and there have been sweeping changes made by Riot recently with the introduction of this Face It system, so they're clearly building changes. We can discuss them more. We have that as a kind of news article section, so we'll get into that later on. But let's talk about where it is working. The EU Masters were on, and they were bangers of games. I have two experts on them here. Ibriz, we asked you to pick one specific game of the week to highlight. You highlighted Game 3 of this semi-final, LDLC taking on Rogue. Can you kind of set the stage, tell me why you chose this match?
So the thing about this matchup is that it wasn't necessarily the most hype, because these guys were, known quantities at the time. You said, look, they have a couple of standout players, but there aren't sky-high expectations. And I think general consensus was that LDLC weren't even supposed to make it this far heading into the tournament, because they got upset in the LFL final. They weren't looking too hot in the group stage either. And then suddenly they make this miracle run, primarily through their jungle mid duo of Tinks and Deathio, who showed up massively. Of course, you also have the narrative of Yellowstar back on the scene, trying to do his best. Facing off against them, you had AGO Rogue. Ago Rogue, yep. Magical, you cast them. What did you call them?
A Go Rogue. A Go Rogue.
Okay.
But mostly Rogue.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, Academy team of Rogue, of course, partnered with new organization in the off season. No expectations for them heading into 2020, because of course the entire Academy team of Rogue last year got harvested up to the main roster. So this was a complete rebuild, and they came in, they did okay domestically, and then kind of floundered around in playoffs, somehow ended up winning the whole split, and actually looked like a top 8 team heading into EU Masters. These two teams were considered to be like top 8 caliber at most heading into the tournament, and the fact that they made it this far and had such a close series in the semis is really testament to maybe that earlier point about how talent wasn't necessarily an all-time high heading into this event, but at the same time, they did perform admirably.
And not only was this a really close series, in fact, LDLC go on to win the event. So you have, I think, a very strong narrative, even if you're Rogue out of this, this was quite possibly the most important match, because those finals didn't look very close. Let's pull up Mad Magical, because you cast this event. You were here.
I did.
This is actually the first time that we've had someone who casted the game for our Game of the Week in the scene. So tell me...
I was almost wondering about that. I'm like, you chose a game where I was casting, the semifinals I was in, so I'm happy you chose that one.
Yeah.
Was that the part of the math, Briss, for you? Did you factor?
I was like, yeah, get him in his comfort zone, open himself up to me, and then...
So that's why I'm like, I got all my notes, I just busted out the notebook again. I'm like,
oh my God.
What page
is
that on?
That's
so
how
give
I
me
can
the
pick his
notebook.
brain.
Give me the notebook,
Okay.
because I've seen
What do you want?
your notes before.
Okay,
I know
read
they're
us the
detailed.
notebook, because
Tell
that is
me-
not going to work from here.
Tell me what
you mean
thought.
this won't work?
Yep.
You mean this
nope,
won't work?
Definitely not. Definitely not. I cannot read that. Tell me what you were thinking coming into this series. Tell me kind of how you on the desk felt about it.
So going into the series, I will say we actually had a Go Rogue peg as the favorites to win. We thought they were the stronger team just on paper compared to LDLC, especially when you look at how LDLC had been doing throughout the entire tournament.
Yeah.
One of their biggest losses was the first game that you see of them, where Bando played Gnar, and I think he died 11 times. It wasn't pretty. It was bad. It was sloppy. Nothing looked too great. But Theo, however you pronounce it, I always forget.
VTO is the easy one, because he just uses the 3 letters.
Okay.
Yeah.
But either way, he got caught out a lot. He didn't look the most confident. Of course, he's very young. He's only, 17, I believe, going into this tournament. He's a very young player, has a lot of time ahead of him to be able to hone in some of these mistakes that he's made during this tournament and be able to come out thriving in the next one. But he got caught out a lot. He did. And it was really on to Tinks to be able to win this series. And I look at how this was, and this series showed why everyone had been hyping him up. He was the player who was getting everyone ahead. He was playing with Theo very well. He was making it, like you said, Ibriz, able to use that mid-jungled synergy to rotate around the map, play that style a lot more. But that's what they had to do. Zanzara didn't look nearly as strong as Tinks.
Yeah.
If you're going to beat them, you can't rely on Bando being able to hold his own too well against Shigenda. Shigenda had been popping off throughout this entire
And
tournament.
Bando had been doing the opposite of popping off that entire tournament.
Yes. And then Khaled in mid lane had been doing great as well. He had been a highlight player in the quarterfinals, where he was the guy that we were actually hyping up more than Shigenda, and we thought it was going to be Shigenda, the guy who we were going to be hyping up the entire time. So you have two players that are in carry positions and solo lane positions that are big threats. It really had to be on to Tinks being able to out jungle Zanzara.
The thing about Tinks is that he took a break from I think he just disappeared to some random smaller league for a while, and everyone kind of wrote him off as kind of washed up before he ever had a chance to shine. He didn't stop playing, but he started playing really, really poorly relative to his previous form in like the past year. And then suddenly, as soon as January 2020 hit, he came out the gate swinging and looked like a complete player reborn. I don't know if you credit that to Yellow Star's shot calling or guidance and whatnot, but Tinks was a very pleasant surprise for anyone that had really followed European regional leagues for the past couple of years, because this is a guy that, as we said, kind of got written off. That being said, the fact that Graves Nidalee Trundle came back into meta just right as EU Masters was starting is a
good
is a blessing.
But... Great segue. Good work, Ibriz. Let's talk about the draft. Because we started this off with Graves coming into this matchup, and that was something...
You get Graves to the Graves one trick!
Graves one trick, not just that. They didn't even first pick it like you expected them to.
That's because Zanzara can't play Graves. He plays utility junglers only. He's a secondary support. He's really smart, but he can't carry.
When I saw the Trundle ban, I remember me and Ender both were just like, why? We even mentioned, we were talking in between, where we're like, okay, they don't ban Trundle here. Like, I know that they want to, but they don't ban it. They still ban Graves, right? The Trundle is not the win condition from game 2. You just played it out poorly, but they banned it anyways.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, first pick Graves. No, it was Varus. Like, you take Graves. You take it now, Rogue. You take that away. And they didn't. They went Horn Ezreal. I'm like, oh, you don't do that. You go Ornn Graves here. You deny the Graves over to Tinks because that is one of his best champs ever. Like you said, the one trick on it. It showed me that there was that lack of champion pool for Zanzara that really was holding Rogue back.
And it, let's say, quickly spiraled out of control. Because it was a very strong early game for LDLC. I do have a little highlight reel, so let's listen to a little bit of your beautiful voice, Man Magical, and then break down what happened during that early game.
Welcome back into European Masters. We're here for Game 3 of the semifinals. Win or lose, it's all on the line here under LDLC or Go Rogue. All comes down to this one game on who is able to get to the finals.
We'll just be walking towards mid lane now and trying to sprint up towards that, if he goes into Zanzara, it could be rough.
Look at this, already getting exhaust. He's getting a little bit of damage back on Khaled, who didn't have enough mana, but Clockwork Windup does a lot when you're able to wail away and get the knock up on the flash to Tinks. He gets a heal and first blood for Theo. Zanzara, he thought he had the play, but Tinks was confident with this team.
Be able to counter gank that one right there, and you know, he commits for the flash forward, and that's fine. But then with both supports roaming up there, didn't realize what was happening. Now with Theo's bot lane,
and Moonlight, there's no real fight back there. He realized the moment he saw the Theo, he said, I'm out of this one. I'm just going to see if I can at least get a little bit of damage.
come around.
Yeah, look at how many control wards they have. They know exactly that Tinks and Vetheo are both here to set this dive up. Popping Shelly, going to be able to get a full charge, probably even get the turret itself. Rogue, though, they at least play this one smart. Oh, nice use of Tempered Fate. The charge will not take the turret. I love that. I love that play.
That feels real bad.
Are at the moment, so it makes it a little bit easier for him to be able to deal with that. Try to see if they can cut him off. Here's going to be the pick on Mystiques. Blown up by that lethality from both Hades and Tinks. No longer having the one who's going to be able to stop them from pushing in. It's going to force the use of True Shot Barrage just to clear out minion waves as Harriet's going to push down mid.
Yeah, let's see if this Herald is a little bit better now that the Bard is dead. Tinks also getting a lot of damage down on Zanzara. Wait a second.
Shockwave, though, gets Yellow Star to go golden. They're looking to see if they can pick up the kill. It's going to be the flash away to survive. Woolite getting a little bit of chip of damage, but the turret will survive despite a lot used on both sides.
I cut you off there. I'm sorry, bad match.
It's okay. It's okay. I talk a lot.
The kind of pace of play set during that early game, though, was sure there's signs of life from Rogue. Sure, they have presence on the map. They got like 2 trades back, I think, by the end of it. But LDLC were absolutely dominating. And coming out of that draft, I kind of built in my head that LDLC were going to win the 5v5 teamfight once we got there, because they had a very teamfight-oriented composition. So I was kind of hoping, as I'm watching that game, that Rogue are, I don't know, going to accomplish anything during the laning phase, during the mid-game as we step out of the laning phase, and it felt like they were just getting shut out of everything.
Yeah, I was actually pretty impressed with the way that we saw LDLC coordinator dive onto Woolite while he was by himself on the Ezreal, because when you pick the Bard Ezreal lane, you're saying, look, Bard go roam around the map, we'll chill back on the Ezreal. Braum doesn't have that much dive threat against an AD carry anyway, so we can just hang back, farm up on Woolite while Mystiques tries to influence the rest of the map. LDLC answered that really, really well, just 3-man dive after 3-man dive. And if you're roaming mid to support your Orianna, it's Orianna. She's not really going to do much to help you out to level 11-ish anyway.
Mm-hmm. And I look at the draft that is there for Rogue. You got a Jarvan. Jarvan should be able to at least gank a lot earlier than Tinks on Graves should. But I will give Tinks a lot of credit. He was in the right place, right time. Yellow Star played that one well as well, making sure to rotate with Mystique so that way they can make these plays, deny what you wanted. You got Jarvan Bard because you knew that they were going to both try to see if they can make plays elsewhere. Ibriz was setting it up as Bard, you don't really want to be in bot lane. You want to be mid. You want to be top. You want to be elsewhere on the map trying to make a play. And with Jarvan, that it makes it even stronger. You will pretty much almost always have it be a 3 pile in one lane, maybe 4, depending on if you want to be able to bring Shugendo or if you have Woolite in the bot lane backing you up. But for the most part, it's going to be about stopping Theo, stopping Tinks from grouping up together on Akali Graves, assassinating people in that late game, pretty much blowing them up. But they never got that. They never were able to get to that point. They fell behind. They weren't proactive enough, in my opinion, on a Graves Bard lane where you should be trying constantly, slamming your face into the opponent to make these plays happen. They were too apprehensive, and I think that ended up paying off for the side of LDLC, where it was Tinks who was the proactive one. He went lethality Graves in game 3 of the semifinals. When I was saying that, I'm like, this is such a troll build that it works because you're going to be able to constantly fight. They're not actually getting tanky enough for it to matter.
Yep.
And the second we started to see, I think, some signs of life from Rogue, the second we started to see, Mystiques in the bot lane, had a couple really cool plays. And I was like, all right, maybe this Bard will work things out. Boom, we're in the mid-game, and I'm looking at the game state, and I don't see what Rogue can do. Because they're not winning a straight team fight. None of their lanes are ahead. They had a mid lane that wasn't technically behind, so you had that, and that was kind of, I want to say, where you pin the hopes. Ibriz, you're watching that game for the first time. What is what is the dream at that point for you? How do Rogue get back into it?
J4 Oriana are pretty reliable for team fights. The thing about the Ezreal as well is that not only is it Wallet's comfort, but it's something that scales relatively well. The reason why you pick it into Varus is because it doesn't necessarily need to lane into the Varus. You can just chill back, Mystic Shot, some farm here and there, and reliably scale up to being around 2 items. The thing is that Oriana and Ezreal both need 2 items to really dish out the damage relative to their counterparts. And yeah, by the time they have 2 items, the Graves and Varus both have a ton under their belts. Akali's already gotten out of her comparatively weak early game. And yeah, I guess it's too little too late by the time this composition from Rogue comes online.
I said, what's the dream? And you said, I don't know.
What's the dream? The dream is that, I don't know, that the Ezreal doesn't die early, the Oriana doesn't die early, which to be fair, she didn't. She's not even.
But they needed, like, beautiful skirmishes somehow, right? They had this burst damage composition, and if they found, like, one person isolated, maybe something comes from that. And it was kind of the world it felt like Rogue were living in, is they needed LDLC to just int. Which they almost did, to be fair.
Int, just not do anything is the thing. And then,
yeah, that would have been better. That would have been better for Rogue, just not do a single thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we get to this mid game where LDLC like almost threw it. I think I have the clip I can pull up. Let me work on this. They like almost throw away their whole lead in this wild series of kills in the mid lane. I do have it. God, I'm good. All right, here it is.
Oh man, look
Not
at
even
this.
threatened.
So I'll just run that while we talk. This whole exchange happens. And this is like the spark of hope for Rogue for me. They get this random kill in the mid lane, and then LDLC inexplicably just keep going back, keep double dipping. And this gets more and more dicey until in the back of my mind I'm thinking, oh, maybe LDLC are on tilt here.
Tinks is on a mission.
What is this
But he's
TP?
bringing a friend.
Why do you TP Buffeo into the backline with Tinks in that situation?
Well, it was like you said, with the Akali Graves just assassinating everyone later on in the game, except the collateral damage did like nothing, and then the Akali couldn't really find her way into that fight to begin with. I think that it was a good attempt at answering, and again, this is an issue that plagues a lot of the regional league teams, is that they don't know how to minimize their losses and just say, all right, this is doomed, let's get out, lick our wounds, and try again afterwards.
Yeah, to me, it made no sense when I saw this. I was trying my best not to hard flame them because it was just bad. But Bando didn't even have TP, so even if you make that play, you're relying on Hades respawning, but Bando's going to be up first. Yellowstar just died. Like, you're watching him die, and no one's near him. The best you're hoping for right now is that you can delay it for it to be like a 3v5, but like that's not really how that works. You wait for that, you lick your wounds, like you said, Ibriz, and wait for the play. You pretty much have to forfeit. I think what you do instead of trying to go for a fight where you get a flank coming in from Theo is instead you try to see if you can set up a little bit around the Infernal Dragon that had just been spawning up, try to fight over that. It shows that there's that inexperience, that there are a lot of newer players here, or there are players that are trying to figure out how they want to work together as a team. LDLC, they were the 2nd seed from France. They weren't the number 1 seed. They ended up losing.
They were
because
first place regular season, and then they
were
did,
first place, but they lost in playoffs.
Yeah, they waited to the end of the gauntlet, and kind of sad.
That's the problem. That kind of just shows you, though, that sometimes under pressure, they don't know how to perform. They don't know how to be able to make those right calls and be able to find something out. Thankfully for them, Rogue was in a similar boat and doing the same kind of mistakes, because if Rogue played perfectly like they did in the quarterfinals, I don't think that this game goes to LDLC. I think with that one play alone, Rogue are able to pick up the pieces and start to scale. They have, even though you have to worry about Graves and you have to worry about Akali, it's Graves who's picked up the Duskblade of Drakthar. You got Jarvan and you have Ornn. They stand in front of Graves, suddenly he does no damage.
And I think the... Sorry, I switched to your single literally right as you finished. You were like, that's my point. And I was like, your face.
Hey, don't blame.
um, I think that was the high point for Rogue, and it was, like I said, built off of, oh, they made a mistake. And Rogue were there to punish, and I thought they had a way back in. And then we had our highlight team fight. Great segue. Thank you. This was kind of the end of the game. It was when LDLC said, okay, it got dicey, but we're back. It's fine. We've totally got it handled.
If they can play around Infernal Soul, they don't want to just give up on that. They want that to be as their end-all be-all for victory.
Yeah, so LDLC are playing for the wave control first, and because they have Baron, it's hard, but here we go!
Oh, look at they engage into the backline. It locked in Hades, but nobody else is able to collapse into the backline. Thea's going to be able to get onto Woolite. Oh, look at the damage comes in. He's trying to get that final execution, going to be able to get the kill onto Shekelad. Everyone's trying to disengage from that Akali, but they just can't. They can't do it. They all are starting to fall. Shigenda in the middle of everybody, and they're chased down by Bando. Tinks already got his double kill, looking for the triple kill onto Woolite underneath the turret. He gets it. LDLC find the fight that they need, and they're looking like they're at the precipice of victory.
Yeah, LDLC, they've got the Baron buff in the mid lane, so they're going to be pushing for that inhibitor at the same time that Hades moves down here to find a free kill onto Mystique's going to be able to get that one in the end, and the Infernal Soul on top of it. Rogue risked everything on that team fight, and they got absolutely burned.
But he could follow up Zenzar. He got Hades, and he got the...
So the whole thing, like, spirals out of control from there. And it was just a beautiful front-to-back team fight. And that was, I think, to be fair, what they were waiting for the whole time, if you're a LDLC fan. They built this composition that's entirely predicated just on defending Hades, building up this front-to-back fight where you have beefy boys in front, you have the Varus sitting behind, they're going to be safe no matter what. And they get exactly that fight. The full dive comes in on Hades, gets absolutely destroyed, and then Hades just sits there and plinks away at the tanks while the Akali does her good work in the back line. And it's like textbook for LDLC. There's no way they lose that fight, right? To the floor.
Right.
If they end, they lose that fight, but that's about it. I mean, it was a bad fight taken by Rogue. It was a great fight taken by LDLC. You had Theo go into the back line, pretty much make it so that everyone has to focus on the Akali. And, well, if you're focusing on Akali, then Hades is getting free damage as lethality bars because nobody's standing on top of the lethality boy. You don't have the tanks on top of him that deny him from being able to get all that poke. What was his KDA going into that series? It was 29.3 going into the series was his total KDA
stats.
for EU Masters. Yes, I actually made that seem like I was pulling that out of my head. It was actually written right here. But
Okay.
Genius.
But it was insane. He was absolutely insane with his KDA. And it's because they were playing around, making sure that it was always him in the backline, getting this free damage off of all these squishy members of Rogue before they got a point to get Ornn and get Jarvan to be really tanky with lethality. It's not going to do anything to them. And then you add a Akali into the mix who's getting a lot of free damage herself onto the squishy members. All it takes is one arrow. You're going to kill Woolite immediately.
I think the disappointing part of that fight for me was that they did actually kind of start the combo on Hades. The Jarvan gets the Cataclysm onto Hades and then just realizes he's made a horrible mistake and turns round and tries to leave and can't leave. The pool's closed. Nobody can join him. It's awful. And he just gets destroyed back there. And I felt like there's the beginnings of a one-team fight if they can combo, I don't know, somehow get a shockwave into the backlines. But they just mispositioned enough that even though they clearly know on Rogue their win condition right now is nuke Hades at the start of fight, they just can't find the execution for it.
Yeah, one flaw in your judgment call and team fight's gone at that point. As you said, very high pressure kind of situation, and yeah, the deciding team fight of your EU Masters tournament career is about as nail biting as it gets in terms of decision making for these teams in the secondary EU leagues.
So is that kind of what you take away from this? Is that, hey, we have some maybe promising talent, but it's still developing. You said this was the weakest EU Masters yet. And underneath the developing talent, you still are seeing these decision-making flaws. You still are seeing these mechanical flaws. Is that where your head's at as you close this series?
So Rogue, immediately after leaving this, released their support, and I guess that's them saying, look, we need a new voice that can guide everyone. And Mystique's, to his credit, is like a very, very strong support. And Woodlight and Mystique's on paper were candidates for being one of the best bot lanes outside of LEC heading into 2020. Heading into the tournament, though, they were maybe top 5 at best because they just didn't look that impressive during the season. But yeah, Rogue said, look, we need some more decision making. Typically, because if you're replacing your supportable players, it's because you need a fresh voice in the team, because that role is, of course, the one that makes the shot calling more most of the time, plus the kind of play facilitator and vision control, all of that stuff. So yeah, I guess it is literally them saying, look, we need a little bit more clarity of judgment. Let's make a change.
Is that also your note, Magical? Would you say shot calling was the undoing for Rogue?
I think shot calling, but I also think that they need to understand where their weaknesses lie a bit better. They need to understand what they have and what they don't have. And sometimes they feel like Zenzar is a good jungler, especially in a tank meta. He loves to play tanks. That's been one of his bread and butters for a long time. But when it's not in his meta, they struggle. That's when this meta ended up developing that it wasn't
His
necessarily...
pocket pick is Nunu. Come on. Whose pocket pick is Nunu in 2020, Magical?
I know, that's what I'm saying. He's a good player, but he needs to be able to have, I think, something to help rein him in, as well as tell him what he needs to do. When you're playing Jarvan with a Barge support, you guys should be making these early plays. You should be looking for the picks. You should be constantly moving around the map. It shouldn't just be like you lose one play mid, and then it's all over from there. You should be still constantly slamming your face in for the first 10 minutes of the game trying to find these plays, trying to find these picks, and they just didn't. They felt apprehensive. They didn't feel like they were strong enough. Maybe that's a lack of shot calling. Maybe that is a lack of someone being a concise voice saying, we got to make these plays. If we don't make these plays, we're going to fall behind. That is a lethality VAR, so you're not going to get tank enough to be able to survive him. You have tanks who's already starting to get ahead on Graves, one of his favorite picks, and he's going lethality too. Still tilted by that build, but either way, there was definitely something lacking for Rogue in that series.
You should play lethality Graves in Earth while Earth is still a thing. It's really fun. Like genuinely.
Or an ARAM. I played an ARAM.
I do an ARAM too, but now
it's fine for that. It just building it in a critical match for European Masters is something that you say that I am already so far ahead that it doesn't matter what you build. We've won this game.
I think, hey, you should try this strat in Earth while it's still a thing, really is a pretty thorough condemnation of any particular strat.
It's fun.
You can't really come back for that. So, LDLC, wrap up that game with a bow. There was that little dicey mid-game where you saw maybe some of their amateur-level shot calling flounder as well, where it just felt like they didn't have a clear voice saying, no, we need to disengage from this fight, that kind of thing. And that got a little bit dicey, but they recovered. You had 2 back-to-back fights where Hades didn't even get scratched, and he just sits there laying in the damage. They take one final team fight and end the game. Let's take a look at that now.
And so unfortunate for the side of Rogue, because you had everything look like it was in position. You had a great ult from Zenzara, but Chekolad just wasn't in range to get Shockwave onto those members. Like you said, it only connected onto the tanky Maokai. Then everyone else just followed through. You had the flanker and Theo onto the backline of Woolite. There's only so much you can do as Ezreal when there's an Akali on top of you.
Now Rogue, they have maintained their 2 inhibitors. They're both going to be exposed for the time being. LDLC sieging up down towards this bottom lane. Now, Baron's going to be coming up in 2 minutes, so unless Rogue full commit in towards a fight, we're not going to see the game end now, but they're going in.
You see that 2 members are on the bottom side of the map. think that this is their time to be able to get the fight, but Zanzara takes way too damage. They're going to be able to jump in onto Hades, but nobody's able to collapse. He turns around the kill onto the tank, gets rid of him. Now Shigenda, he's the only one left around to win the world, and you can see in the backline, they've taken out Woolite. Going to be able to get the shockwave only onto one Mystiques. Double kill for Vatheo. Shigenda the next to fall in the fight. He knows it's all over. Hades is on a killing spree. They even flash forward to knock back Chekalad and try to get the kill over to Vatheo, but he will be able to nearly escape, but it does not matter. It is the LFL at victory, wanting to get back to the finals. They made it last spring. They're doing it this one.
LDLC are just too damn strong, charging in towards the base here, making sure they can finish things off in style. Tink's untouchable throughout this series, and France is going to the finals.
They will. It will be LDLC's first time at it. They're going to be happy with that victory. They found the fix. They want to pad the KDA one more time, but Viva la France, they go to the finals.
Viva la France, indeed. A very, very strong performance for LDLC as they close that match, and they closed the tournament. How did you feel about that team coming out of it, Magical? Is this an LDLC, is this a farm team?
So the moment I saw that, they won, I was like, okay, they're gonna win the finals. I didn't think that it was, I kind of thought it was gonna be them winning the finals, depending on if Malvastar had won. I feel like that would have been a closer finals. But once I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm more favoring LDLC going into this one. Of course, I was still rooting for Kick more for the memes than anything else. It was a lot of fun being able to meme it up on Twitter. Did not think that it would get to the level it did.
As someone who, vaguely follows, I am doing things with my time. I'm casting other events, other esports. So I, try and keep a foot in. I was catching some of the EU Masters games. But I was not watching the whole tournament live. I do follow you on Twitter. And there was a wild ride of, I'm going to say, dank Poland that just came at me one morning at 3 a.m. And I woke up at my normal wake-up time, open up my Twitter, I'm like, wow, what's up in esports? And it's just 400 photos of Pookie over my Twitter feed. What happened? What was that?
So that started with Chakrez. He changed his picture, and then I was like, okay, I'm surprised I didn't get memed about this to change my picture. And of course, I immediately get memed to change my picture. And so I changed my picture. And then it goes to Ender. And Ender sees me do this, and he's like, I'ma do this too. And because you had all three of us do this, it caught fire. And everyone started changing their picture. Everyone started
Pookie.
getting memed about it. To Pookie style, yes. It was a meme that got out of control. I am happy it happened. We jinxed the hell out of Kick. I mean, Kick they were a good team. I'm not going to take that away from them. If you look at that, I think it was the first game of the finals where, it was the first game where they looked actually pretty decent, where they had some life. And then even in the other games, despite the fact that they lost them, they constantly got ahead early game. It's just they didn't know what to do with the lead, and that was always the tragic thing for them. It was like, what do you do with the lead? Oh.
Hot rumor for you here.
What up?
Speaking of Kick, that is Mystique's new home since he left Rogue.
Oh.
And that reunites a bot lane of Pookie Style and Mystiques that trashed everybody outside of LCS 2 years ago. There you go.
Interesting.
We've heard the rumors. We've been updated now. So we got to plow on EU Masters. Kind of put a bow on it, Man Magical, because it's rare we get to have the actual caster from the event on this show. We'll have Captain Flowers on next week to talk about the LCS. But, before that, as kind of the first person we've had from an event. How was the event for you? Was it educational experience?
I loved it. It was definitely educational. I learned a lot. It was great casting with Ender again. I missed casting with him. It was something, like I said, we go way back to when I first started casting. So being able to cast with him was great. Talking with the quick shot, he gave me a lot of good advice that hopefully I'll be able to bring to further events. And especially listening to the semifinals, I think I did a fine job, banger up job in it, but definitely need to make sure that the volume's a bit better. Me and Ender were on different volumes in that. Even though in
I-
call we both like it sounded great. We sounded like we had the same energy. But then when it's broadcast, obviously because it's online, it's a lot harder to be able to get that perfect.
I did an event on LAN where, and I was about to name the event, and I'm not going to name the event because I'm about to shit on their production. But we do the entire event, sounds great, and then my colorcaster starts getting roasted on Twitter. Everyone's saying that he's like talking over the team fights and making weird noises, and we're like trying to work it out. I pull up the VOD, and his volume is maybe twice as loud as mine.
Whoa.
So every time he does the normal colorcaster thing where the team fight's going on and he goes, "Oh my god!" It's just the only thing you can hear. You can't hear me calling the team fight. You're just hearing the colorcaster go, "Oh my god! Whoa!"
Nice.
And that sounds so bad when it's just listened to in isolation.
Right.
When it's the loudest thing. So bad sound mixing can absolutely ruin a cast. So you didn't have that, and you should be grateful.
No, we did not. We did not have that at all. I will say it was definitely something because I'm already a loud person. I'm a very excitable person as well. If people weren't able to get that from EU Masters, I was trying to rein that in as well. I was definitely trying something new with being able to pace myself a bit better, especially in the early game where it's slower, and then be able to bring it up a little bit more and get faster and faster to be able to get to that rap god eventually in the team fights where I could then have the big bang. But it was something I was working on.
That's fun, and I can talk about casting tech all day, but it was fun to kind of watch because I did notice you were trying new things during the event, and I think that's what events like that are really good for because you're getting to work with people that are more and less experienced than you, and there's a whole spectrum of kind of different angles that brings. Let's move on now. We have our article of the week from Qrank.gg. This is from Ibriz again. We're talking about... I was looking... There were, other articles we could have pulled this week. There was a different article about how League of Legends, how the LCS compared to... I forget. I was just looking at Qrank and I was like, wow, we could have pulled this other article. But Ibriz, for some reason, pulled this handsome young writer Ibriz Diaz's article instead. I do wonder why. Anyway. So you're talking about the Tier 1 events in Teamfight Tactics, Legends of Runeterra, and Valorant, which Riot have said will be done by third parties. So for anyone who's watching and they're not an esports caster, typically the way scenes work is one of two ways. They're either all run by... The entire scene is run by the guy who makes the video game, kind of how League of Legends is run, where you have the first party, Riot Games, running all of the tournaments, or you have something like Dota, where Valve doesn't actually run any of the tournaments, even the international. They just license to ESL, license to NGE, or some other tournament organizer who is a production company whose role is to organize the entire tournament, fly all the players out, basically do all the tournament stuff, and then slap the international name on the front. And Riot have announced with this that for their forthcoming scenes in all of those games, they are going to be licensing out tournaments. They are going to be having third parties run tournaments. And that's wild to a lot of people because I think they expected those games to be run like League of Legends, for there to be an LCS but for Valorant. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Personally, I don't. You look at the beginnings of LCS, you look at the beginnings of LEC, that was licensed out. LEC was completely ESL before.
Yeah. European LCS. Yeah, I remember.
That's how it started. That's how it all was initially. Everything was licensed out because you didn't know if this was going to stick around. You didn't know if it was going to stay. Why invest all that extra money into something if you're not sure if it's going to stick around? I get licensing out personally.
I think the act of licensing the events makes sense. The danger for me that kind of, as somebody who talks to a lot of producers, that Riot is playing with is they only get to do it once if they want to lock the scenes down as they grow again. Because if you're ESL and you are running tournaments for, hypothetically League of Legends. You're hypothetically running a whole lot of tournaments for League of Legends, and you're investing a lot in League of Legends, and maybe the tournaments themselves aren't making a whole lot of money, but you're building brand value, and you're building name, and you're making people look forward to the ESL tournaments, and then hypothetically, a Riot game says you can't run tournaments for League of Legends anymore. That's a big loss of investment for ESL. And Riot have gone to, I've heard of these conversations happening, they've gone to various tournament organizers and said, no, I swear, it's not going to happen again. We're serious about this. It is all going to be the third parties running the events for the foreseeable future. But if Valorant takes off, for instance, and they lock it down, they organize a pro league, then they are never going to be able to work with a third party again of any conceivable size, because nobody will want to have their investment burned.
My question then is, does that even matter to Riot? Does that even matter to them if they have two esports that have taken off in that fashion? You have two things that are that massive. Doesn't matter that nobody wants to take you anymore. You go, I got Valorant, I got LCS. I don't need to worry about you.
In a hypothetical world where Valorant is as big as LCS, you can make the argument that it's worth burning that goodwill. But they are also, I think, stretching the boundaries of what they can do as a tournament organizer, as a TO. Because Riot Games, their esports division is tiny compared to ESL. Their esports division is much larger than any other publisher or developers, but if you compare them to the tournament organizers that actually just run tournaments year-round, they have nothing on them. So if they want to in-house, hypothetically Valorant, that would require them staffing up in a massive way that I haven't seen them doing. When there's big hiring going around in the esports industry, people hear about it. You get past those job applications, you see people applying for them, and nothing like that's been happening. So I frankly just don't think Riot have the resources, and they don't have the resources to, run Tier 2 in North America. They're farming that out to Faceit, who are a pretty big tournament organizer. So they need these third parties. At least for the games they don't want to in-house, even if that hypothetically includes Valorant. So I don't think they can afford to burn all of the goodwill with the wider esports community.
Can I use this opportunity to talk about the best third-party League of Legends event to ever exist?
No, go ahead.
IPL 5, IGN Pro League number 5. You had the Taipei Assassins coming off of their World Championship victory in Season 2. You had World Elite, who are the team that everyone said should have won that tournament, but then I don't know if you watched Season 2 Worlds, TJ? Or even Magical?
I did. I watched it all live.
There were tech issues in the quarterfinals between CLG EU and World Elite.
You're
and
not
then
talking about a certain song that was played over and over again for 12 hours, right? No.
Oh man. But yeah, they redid it another day, and then World Elite folded in that rematch. And then everyone was like, whoa, if that had gone to plan, then World Elite would have won the whole thing. Anyway, so yeah, World Elite get a chance for redemption, TPA off their world title. Basically, all of the World Championship teams, plus Fnatic, who had won Season 1 Worlds but not qualified for Season 2. Yeah, just a ton of hyper-competitive teams, all at a very, very similar level. And then that was some of the closest and most competitive, like, League of Legends internationally during an off-season that we'd ever seen. And it was insane.
I think it's worth noting, a lot of people have this perception that League of Legends has been all run by Riot for a while. That's not true. LCK, until very recently, for instance, was all being done by tournament organizers in Korea. It was OGN being a lot of the organizing force behind that until Riot Korea gobbled it up just last year. the whole EU Masters circuit was being done by third parties, including EU Masters being produced itself by ESL UK. I don't know, Magical. Yeah, I believe it was in-house to EU, right? Riot EU ran it this year, or is it still ESL?
Right EU.
Yeah.
It was Right EU.
Last year that was Riot UK, or ESL UK, and ESL UK is now no more. They folded. So there's some speculation you can do there as to whether or not that sort of contract being in-housed is part of why big TOs like ESL are having trouble, because it's not just Riot who are taking their big Tier 1 esports leagues and bringing them in. Ubisoft did it recently. That was also
With Rainbow Six?
Yeah, with Rainbow Six. And that was also a contract that ESL UK actually had. And it's no longer a case of production stuff, because sure, go back, production on 2015 esports events in the West was not great. But ESL UK, just to keep harping on that example, had been putting out very high-quality work. It's just a case of the margin for profit is much better for Riot if they are profiting from the event they're running. So they, I think, will be continuing to grind to in-house these events, and as they try and bring people in for their other games, and bring people in for their amateur scene in North America, which is our next conversation topic, I think they're going to struggle to convince tournament organizers that they're not going to do what they did in EU, where they built up EU Masters, and ESL UK did a lot of the work building that show, building the respect for it and the excitement for it, and then this year they are not on the project, and I don't think anyone at ESL UK is particularly bummed about that, because they are all currently finding new work, unfortunately, so they have other concerns, but...
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
What is
Unfortunately. Unfortunately. Not fortunately.
What? Then they found new work? Okay. Alright,
No,
TJ.
they had to find new work. They had a great thing going, and they had to find new work, although some of them are working for some really cool devs. I know Will Atwood, who was my producer when I was there, is actually working at Ubisoft, so maybe Riot can just hire them all, and it'll work out. Anyway, you're going to start to see, I think, orgs doubt the veracity of Riot when they say, trust us, this time it's for real. And that's something I think Riot need to pay attention to. Let's talk about North America, though, because it's a really good segue.
Okay.
We talked about EU Masters. As of this year, Faceit, who are actually an English tournament organizer, will be managing a circuit for amateur in North America. And they're not actually doing production outside of the official Faceit branded events, but they're licensing out the Faceit Amateur Circuit name and Faceit Amateur Circuit points to a whole bunch of online tournament organizers, like I believe Mad Magical, you can correct me on this, Big League, for instance, who've been around for a while, who've been names in the amateur scene for a while in North America. So as kind of the authority on North American amateur, I was going to say here, but in general as well, Magical, what's your take on this? How do you feel about this upcoming year? Do you think this is fixing problems?
I feel like it's more like Band-Aid fixes, personally. I feel like there are a lot of issues that have actually been pretty vocalized within the community. A lot of people have said that this is not enough. You're not doing enough to incentivize organizations to even stay in North America, let alone to join the tournaments, let alone to play in them. A lot of people feel like, why bother doing this when I could just go to European Masters? Why bother even participating? It doesn't seem like there's a pathway for success for us here. Sure, we can get our players.
You're talking about casters or teams or both?
Teams. I'm talking about organizations, organizers. I'm talking about sometimes players, but more staff than the players themselves. When it comes to players, they have it's a pretty obvious trajectory for them of success that can get them noticed, similar to a European Masters. But for the staff behind them, not so much. It's a lot more muddled and a lot messier for them to be able to show, hey, I was able to help out with this and get this team to scouting grounds, get them to win big league, get them to win face it, get them to win this prize money. It's like, oh, that's great, but I don't see, like, just because you got second in it, it's like there's not an actual trophy or a backup. You don't have the LFLs, you don't have the UKLCs that you can back it up with, the SLOs to say, I won this league. It doesn't matter if I won European Masters, I won this league to be able to prove that.
Sure.
I think.
And actually,
Sorry.
I want to play off of that. No, it's okay. I want to play off of that because, honestly, I think that with the introduction of this circuit and with scouting grounds, there's at least a path upwards for players to get noticed by academy teams. The thing is, and what we mentioned earlier about the state of NA Amateur, was that there's no upward path for the organizations, while the only Tier 2 League of Legends in North America is franchised. Because, yeah, Face It and Scouting Grounds are cool, but that's basically Tier 3 behind Academy. I don't know if you agree with that, Magical, but
do.
you seem to. Yeah. And I think that that's an issue for the organization. We talk again and again about the players, but I think that it becomes less and less financially viable for these actual organizations to get involved, knowing that at best the better parts of their team just get harvested at the next scouting ground.
Not even the next scouting grounds. Usually just halfway
God.
through the year they get.
Hold up. I hit the wrong button.
Okay,
Continue.
there we go. Hello. But it's usually even halfway through the year, while they're in the middle of some of these things, that you'll have players get scalped and brought into academy because something will be going wrong, where they're like, okay, this academy team's clearly not working. We've seen that before with Piecake Lord, where he got taken, then dropped. It happened before with Odd Orange, taken, then dropped. And those teams that end up losing that player then have to completely change everything around losing that player. They're not expecting that player to come back. They're like, okay, that player's gone. We have to reorganize. We have to fix things. Sometimes, if you look at Odd Orange with Radiance, he was the critical point of that team. He was what many considered the linchpin. And
Can I actually put out one example? Sorry, I know you were talking about Odd Orange in particular, but Radiance, as soon as you said that, my mind went back to Flares, Aethers. He stood out a little bit and then suddenly got imported to the UKLC to play for Barrage. Like, that is such a weird career trajectory that happens once in, I don't know, like 1,000 players. But
I believe he also went to OPL for a brief stint as well.
Ages ago.
So he went to OPL, then he went all the way over to the UKLC,
he went
then came back
to UKLC. He was in UKLC this split, basically.
All right, I have to cap this discussion because we are running over time, and we were doing really well. So I don't know what we hit. I think capstone from us, if we want to have a parting thought, is that you think the NA amateurs are an improvement, but you'd like to see a more formalized system, Magical? Yes,
completely. It's a step. It's only a small step, in my opinion. It's a Band-Aid fix. You need to go more. I personally just think you rehaul the whole system, rework everything, and try it again from scratch.
I want to ask you a follow-up question. So, in a sentence, what is the ideal system? What is your dream system for NA Amateur?
Honestly, I copy European Masters. I copy it.
But is that
100%.
States? Do the states all have different?
No. So you would do it based off region. You'd make it so there's like a
West Conference,
Northwest,
East Conference.
Even like that. I'd probably just make like for US, probably one Canadian one, maybe even throw in like a Mexican one, just to have like a Mexican league to be able to play in, because a lot of those players end up going and playing down in Latin America. Yeah. And a lot of those players actually feel like that was not something that ended up paying out well for them, because now they gotta go all the way to Chile. They don't get to practice and scrim with the North American teams like they like to. So I think you toss that in there. You could even do one for the Caribbeans where you can have a league there that's set up to be able to feed into the same system.
All right. I like it. So, we're going to wrap this show now. We play a little game at the end of every episode, Magical, and normally we talk about this with the guest ahead of time. We did not.
Oh,
You are completely
no.
unprepped. So here's how it works. I'm going to give you 4 things. There is a list, and you guys have to make it, rank it in order. So, for instance, our first slide today is rank the possibility of Riot picking up what Blizzard and the OWL are laying down. And your 4 things that you must rank in order with Ibriz's agreement, you have to have one list together, are DJ Khaled, who famously worked the Overwatch League Season 1 finals, making a sequel, in this case to League of Legends, not Overwatch, giving the LCS exclusivity to, like, YouTube or something, and
Facebook gaming.
hiring Monte Cristo. So, of those 4 things, which do you think is the most likely? We'll build a list. You guys have to rank it in probability. I'm telling you to go.
Okay, Ibriz, I feel like we have to go with exclusivity because they're almost doing that already with Twitch anyways. So
Yeah.
that's probably the easiest number 1. We toss that number 1, right? That's going to be our
Sure.
number 1. Number 2, that's a hard one. I feel like between the next 3 that they don't want any of them. Well, I love Monte Cristo. I've worked with them in the past.
I think you take
Toss
Lol
good over
too. I think
Magical
you
to
take
the
Lol
left.
too. I seriously think you take Lol too.
This way.
Other way.
There we go. There we go.
What? More,
So-
more.
Anyways, I was just kind of getting the camera. Anyways, so I feel like we got to get. It's either I think DJ Khaled. I think DJ Khaled's our second one. What do you think?
DJ Khaled too. It's up to you.
I'm gonna go with DJ Khaled. I feel like DJ Khaled's the most
We the
likely
best
one. Yeah,
Okay.
because
We're
I
the
think
best esport.
I just feel like they're not going to make a League of Legends 2. Like
Wild
that's
Rift
like
too.
yeah, that's so low on their priorities. They're like, nah, we're not gonna do that. So that's why I'd put this like. I think we both agree though that they're more likely to make in League of Legends 2 than they are to bring Monte Cristo back on. I love Monty. I love Monty, but I feel like that's.
I'm a blank slate.
I've worked with Monty before. He's an awesome guy. It just, I don't think that Riot is going to work with them. As it's more of from their point of view than from Monty's. Monty would love to be able to get back in. I just don't think that Riot will bring him back on. And I think Monty would be great back on. He'd be an awesome person to have
The
back in the League of
absolute
Legends scene.
backpedaling you've had to do for
No,
this
no, 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 no.
sentence.
I
I think
I have to
Riot
because I love
Games
Monty.
are
He's an
more
awesome
likely
guy.
to make League of Legends 2
Question.
than hire Monte Cristo is beautiful. I'm so happy I could
I
create this
have to
moment.
because I love Monty and I feel I would love to have him back in the scene. I just don't see it happening.
Okay, TJ, moving swiftly onwards.
Ibriz, do you agree with this list?
Why not?
All right, our top 4 is down. It is most likely the LCS is exclusive to another platform. DJ Khaled is the second most likely to get hired. Monte Cristo, the least. And League of Legends 2 is our answer for third place. Our next slide, let me throw it up here. We have a mid-season streamathon coming up. Which block are you most looking forward to? And the options I've selected are the LPL All-Stars match, China playing Korea, the EU face-off, or the SEA versus VCS showdown.
I think we go for the. Well, I'm most hyped for the C showdown, as you call it, PCS VCS showdown. Yeah, I'm.
Why? I
for
wonder
that one.
why.
It's
Are
actually
you?
public
What?
now, so.
Can we
but,
catch Ibriz? Is that no? Okay.
Just
Continue.
watch the broadcast. Anyway, yeah, that one is hype because it's the top 2 teams from each region. But I think that, of course, most people are hyped for China versus Korea because that is top 4 from both of these huge regions.
Mhm.
That being said, I think the showdown is immediately after that because All Stars is All Stars and the face-off is just talent from each EU region language. So it's, again, not
I'm
hype.
okay with that.
Yeah. You basically have 2 mini MSIs versus 2 mini All Stars.
And I'd rather have MSIs than I'd have All Stars
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
That's at least how I feel.
Same.
Poor OPL. They tried, alright?
They tried. You know what? I'll say it's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. We'll take what we can get.
So that's your list. China versus Korea, then the SEA Showdown, followed by the EU Face-Off and the OPL All-Stars.
Sure.
Yes.
A lot of agreement going around today. I don't know. All right. We'll work on it. Here is your next challenge. There's been a lot of conversation in the community. Here are 4 champions I've had different analysts tell me are going to be broken when we return to pro play. Soraka, Graves, Annie, and Bard.
I'm not allowed to meme it, am I?
You
I have
are
to be
absolutely allowed to meme it if it will
then
infuriate
Bard,
Ibriz.
Annie, Graves, Soraka. And this is based purely... No, I take it back. It's Annie, Soraka, Bard, Graves. And this is all based off how I feel like they would be if you went full attack speed on them.
Soraka's actually, on a serious note, Soraka is the best champion on that list right now because she can be played in 4 roles and is
Annie can't? Hello? She can jungle too. That's 5 roles. Come on, get on her level.
People
Get
are
on
actually
Annie's level.
Soraka. That's the difference.
No. Annie all the way. Annie can play 5 roles. Soraka can only play 4.
Soraka, Graves, Bard, Annie, if we're being serious, but if Magical's memeing, go with his list.
Soraka, Bard, you said? Do you agree with that, Magical?
Yeah, I would actually probably put Bard pretty high, yeah. I think Bard, he's gotten a lot of buffs recently. I think that once you see pro play come back, he's going to be like one of the top tier supports.
And you guys all agree that Soraka is busted.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But we're sleeping on Annie here, which is interesting to me.
I mean, I told you my thought process on her. I have the 5 roles that she can play. She can play all 5.
So you'd
Just
bump
saying.
Annie up then?
I would put Annie at the top, but I'm told I'm not allowed to meme.
You have to agree on a list. So if you want to hold Ibriz hostage,
and just say Annie deserves to be higher on the list. Damn it!
All right. Anyway, moving swiftly onwards, TJ.
you're driving us forwards. That's your agreed upon list. Magical.
Yeah.
You're not fighting him.
Nah, I'm not gonna fight it.
All right, it is. Then Soraka, Bard, Graves, and Annie in that order. Our final list as we close things out. Tell me, which of these 2020 champions is the best? There's been a lot of conversation about them as they've been nerfed down. Seth, Senna, Yuumi, or Qiyana?
I
They're
mean,
actually
Senna.
all pretty decent still.
Yeah, that's like Senna has to be top though, right? Senna, fasting Senna still works like legitimately, so that's easily number 1. Then Yuumi.
Yuumi, yeah. Then Set, and then Qiyana.
And then Qiyana. Yeah.
Qiyana got nerfed completely out of one
Yeah,
role.
she's
Fine, but she can't be played jungle anymore.
No, she can just. It has to be into a very niche matchup.
If you play jungle on her, you have to pick it into like AP Shyvana or something that will farm till 6 and not.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's very niche. It's very niche to be able to play her jungle.
TJ,
I think
you your volleyball question, man.
Yeah, this one's an easy one. I agree. I 100% agree with this list.
It's because you made half of it.
Okay. Do you disagree with any of it?
No.
He's all vicious because you made half of it. Meek. So then, in order, the best 2020 champions are Senna, Yuumi, Set, and Qiyana. I'm not gonna lie, I thought Yuumi would be higher on that list. I really think
there's only one spot higher that she can be.
Right, and I thought Yuumi would be there.
No, fasting Senna wins out.
All right. I also think I'd put Set above Senna, so maybe I just have bad opinions. Or bad opinions of Senna.
Maybe bad opinions of Senna.
Thank you for the save, Magical. I appreciate it. Not all my opinions are wrong, just that specific one. That will bring us to a close for the day. I hope you enjoyed your time here, Magical. If you would like to plug yourself, what are you doing over the next couple of weeks? Where can people find your Qrank content?
So you can find me at twitch.tv/mad_magical. Twitter. And then on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/madmagical, no underscore. I'll be streaming there just to kind of do some fun tournaments and try to get more practice casts in. Probably when Academy comes back up, I'm still gonna wait to see what the response is gonna be on how the format might change for that. But I'll probably get involved in some way in Academy again. I always like to stay involved in these kind of things, and I would love to be involved in European Masters again. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, but
If you're
we'll see
watching
how
Riot,
the future goes.
love to be involved in
Wink.
European Masters. Okay.
Wink.
Ibriz, would you love to be involved in European Masters? And if so, where can people track your involvement in European Masters?
It could be nice, yeah. You can find me at twitter.com/IbrizLol. As you can see, that it was there, but it's gone now.
It is right there. I slid it up.
It is right there. Sorry. Yeah. Otherwise, you can come see me this Thursday on twitch.tv/lolpacific, because we will be covering the PCS VCS showdown. It starts tomorrow, so tune in tomorrow. But I'm on from Thursday, so if you come and see me, it's going to be Thursday. But come tomorrow anyway; it'll be a good time.
Fans of the show, tune into official Riot channels. It won't be hard. And that means we have to plug Qrank GG as well. It is Qrank.gg, spelled Qrank.gg. It's also literally everywhere, so I don't know. You can find up-to-date articles on not just League of Legends, but also multiple other esports, including the Overwatch League. I believe we have some stuff on not just the fighting game scene, but Smash in specific. And with EVO coming up, maybe you keep an eye on that. Watch this space. My name is, of course, TJ, and I've got one of these as well. You can find me on Twitter at esportstj, and I will be broadcasting a little bit of amateur coming up. I'm doing some collegiate later today, so keep your eye on the North American amateur scene, as I'll be doing some League of Legends soon, which is always exciting. Thank you once again for joining us, Magical. It was great having you on. I'm going to give you the parting word. Give me exactly one word, please.
Part.